Hey everyone, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the idea of representation and really in relation to adoption. This is something that I've been processing through in my own experience and my adoption journey the past couple of years, but it's also was kind of brought to light again in the past week when Kamala Harris was elected VP. I was getting pictures from my friends whose little girls were standing in front of the TV and watching her speech. And I know that's a really hot topic right now. I'm not, making any kind of political statement, but regardless of who you voted for, that was super significant. It was super significant for women. It was really significant for women of color. I was really excited to see, my friends and my niece just watch this woman hold this position, and just the power, the message that sends, like, hey, someone like me that looks like me has accomplished this. And so it started thinking again how this relates to representation in adoption. And I did a little video kind of related to this, some of the importance of it, the importance of if you have a child that you foster or especially have adopted that is not white, there is different implications for your home, and you need to be thinking through those things. I was thinking about how this has impacted me in my adoption story, and I will say this every time, every adoption story, journey is unique. Everyone's experience is different. Everyone's feelings and emotions and things related to it are all different. So you're probably never going to find an adoptee that agrees on everything or sees everything the same, but this is my experience. So this idea of representation is super important. I've mentioned to many families, there's some great places to start. Get books that you're reading to your child that show the diversity of the world, right? Be intentional with the movies and the books and the things that you select in your home. If you have a child that has different texture hair than you are used to, you're going to need to learn how to care for it properly. That's super important. And I think those are really good first steps, but I think you have to go a little farther than that. So if you are a white adoptive mom and you were doing all those things I mentioned, but they're not seeing women or men that look like them also filling these roles that you're reading about in books or you're watching on movies, it feels a little distant, right? It almost feels like, that's a nice story over here and it's represented kind of like a fairy tale, but it's not lived out in their life. They're not seeing people that look like them do everyday things or accomplish great things, right? That's why Kamala Harris getting elected to VP was so powerful, because we've talked about having a woman in office. We've talked about having a woman of color in office. And that was a topic in 2016 when Hillary Clinton was running, but now it's actually happened, right? Like, that is so powerful to see her on stage and what that means, right? For all of the women after her. And so I think it's the same in adoption. For me, I grew up in a white home, in a predominantly white community, at least the community that my family held as far as friends and our church. And there wasn't a lot of people of color around, not really till I got into high school, and a lot of my friends, my friend group was very diverse, but as far as, people around our family, that wasn't always represented well. And sometimes that just happens, right? We live in areas where that is just a reality, and that's not to shame anybody. But I think we need to be intentional in thinking through that, right? Because I never saw a woman, a brown-skinned woman that looked like me, that had curly hair like me, accomplishing the things that I wanted to accomplish, right? Teachers, other moms, women in the church, right? I didn't see that representation, shown in my ethnicity. And so that kind of left this kind of confusing space for me, because I felt a little isolated. I always felt a little different. You notice it. And I noticed it as a kid. I didn't have words for it until I was older, but I did notice it. I noticed that I looked different. I noticed that there wasn't really a lot of people that look like me, especially in areas of leadership. And that as I've gotten older, I realized affected me. You don't see that represented in your community of people that look like you. It feels distant, it feels removed, it feels like empty words. And so I think we need to be really intentional with this. Like I said, all of the things that I mentioned before are great first steps, but I think we have to take it a step further. I think we have to really think about if we're going to do this well, if we've brought children into our home that are different than us, ethnicity wise, then what does that mean? We may we need to make sure that they are seeing people that look like them represented well. And so that may mean diversifying your community. So in my experience, I've seen some really good examples of this being done well, and then some areas where that first step was taken, it was very intentional, and it hasn't gone any further. So I know many white adoptive parents over the years, and a lot of them have been very intentional. They try to soak in all of the information, and I think that's good. Remember, like, great first step. But I don't see them taking that extra step to make sure that there is representation in their community and the people that they are bringing into their homes, into the spaces that they're in, the friends that they have. And so their kids still aren't seeing people that look like them represented well in their actual daily life. It's kind of this distant reality, but it's not in their own home. They're not seeing it face to face. They're not interacting with Black or brown men or women who look like them on a day-to-day basis, right? And so again, it feels very removed. And so I think that is an area that's been missed, that we don't go a step farther and make sure that you're looking around at your community and seeing, like, is anybody that looks like my child being represented in my friend group, being represented in my church, being represented in the spaces that we hold, because that is what representation is, and that is where it's really important, right? It's really cool to see the famous singer or the music artist or whomever from a distance. That's super important too. But to have someone who looks like you in your home or around you pouring into your life, that is significant. And so I think it's really important that adoptive and foster parents are intentional with this piece as well. I know that's something for me that would have been really helpful when I was growing up. It's hard to explain. I think sometimes if you are majority culture and you haven't ever been kind of on the outside, but you feel when you are different, make sure that that representation is healthy too. So I grew up in Southern California. There was a big Hispanic community, but because we weren't really in that community, a lot of times what I saw on the news and stuff was just negative representation of my people. And that isn't healthy either, right? There are so many negative effects that can come from that. So make sure that you are being intentional of what that representation looks like, and that you are being fair in that as well. One question though, I just remember that I got that is kind of in relation to this was, should white families adopt, children of color? And this is, again, in my own opinion, I think they should. We have children that need homes. We have children that need forever families, right? We have kids in the foster care system who need temporary families. And so I think that what we need to do a better job of is just how we train up families, how we encourage families to be thoughtful if they are bringing a kid of a different race into their home. But I don't think that it should be something that isn't allowed. Now, what I will say is, if you are looking at adopting a child of color and you live in a predominantly white area and you have not thought through how you are going to be intentional now with your home, and you are unwilling to do that or unable to do that, I think you should think really twice about maybe not doing that, right? There are lots of white children that need homes as well. And so I would just be really intentional about that. If you are bringing a kiddo into that environment, what does that mean? And so I think that the community needs to do a better job of challenging these families to think through it before they ever get to that point of having a child in their home, and helping them make a good decision for what would be best for that child. I don't think that we should make it a rule or something that you have to adopt, only in your race, because I don't think that's what the people of God look like anyway. And I think there's so much beauty in having these multi-ethnic, diverse homes. But I think we have to be intentional with it. And I think we have to train better to it. And I think we have to start talking about it more. And I think we have to really, if you're an adoptive parent or foster parent, allow yourself to be critiqued in areas where maybe you need to improve. And I think we need to do a better job of hearing adoptee stories who've lived this, right? And who have pains of when this wasn't done well, and aren't there to shame people, but are trying to help the community get better as a whole. So not just in the area of ethnicity, but in all areas, adoption related, because I think there's so many things that we haven't talked about or we haven't trained well to. And I think there's a lot of good things going on now, but I still think we have a lot of work to do. If you guys have more questions on this or thoughts, please share it in the comments below. I would love to continue this conversation. You guys sent in a couple of different questions, and I would love to address some of those as well. So I'm definitely gonna address those. I hope that this was helpful, and I'm looking forward to doing more of these.